TV.
You're welcome to the program Issues with Coco Umar Christie. Today we'll discuss a lot of issues in LASEMA. We'll be discussing about the expansion of LASEMA operations and other visits of the House of Rep Committee and other reports on LASEMA. We'll have someone today that will be discussing and be giving us an insight, and he's no other person but the Head Public Affairs, LASEMA. Sir, it's so good to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
So can we have your profile, please?
I'm the head of the Public Affairs Unit in LASEMA, and that is the engine room of the information dispersal liaison with the public when it comes to enlightenment, and also liaison with the media. We are the ears and eyes of LASEMA, as LASEMA is the octopus that takes care of Lagos State in its entirety.
Thank you very much, sir. What's your name?
My name is Nosa Okunbor.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, we'll be discussing more on the activities that happened a few days in LASEMA. We'll start with the House of Rep Committee on Disaster and Emergency visited LASEMA, and they pledged to support other states and the expansion of LASEMA. So what was the outcome of the visit and the reaction to it?
I take it that we are talking about the visit of the House of Rep Committee on Emergency and Disaster Preparedness, chaired by Honorable Abdurrahim Olatunji Olawi. And on that entourage, the DG LASEMA, Air Vice Marshal Mohammed, was represented by the Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting, Mr. Kayode Fagbedi. And in summation, I can say confidently that the outcome was very, very commendable and heartwarming too, because it takes something great, something big for a big brother to actually see and be inquisitive about what makes the small brother tick. Lagos might be the smallest in terms of land space, but in terms of population density, it has over 10% of the Nigerian populace, and we do have a very high percentage of foreigners within us as well, who have come to Lagos to invest. And looking at emergency, we all know that due to development and the rate at which Lagos is growing, one has to be very, very careful and plan appropriately for emergencies and disasters. And I can tell you with all sense of responsibility that LASEMA is up to the task.
Thank you. We have to look at the other aspect of LASEMA's and NEMA's visitation. Were they really satisfied on their visit to LASEMA when they came?
A big yes to that question. They were not only satisfied, they commended LASEMA, the Lagos State government in its entirety, and Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for not only for funding LASEMA, for also seeing to the welfare of the agency staff, and Dr. Okeoson Itolu, who is the head of LASEMA, the Director General, who was the pioneer GM, is somebody that has worked assiduously to ensure that the LASEMA staff, Oracle staff or otherwise, are all fully motivated.
In improving the disaster response in LASEMA, what should be put in place?
LASEMA as it is, for all who knows, some would say when you are at the top, there's nowhere else to go. But you can always climb higher, you can always raise the bar a notch higher. despite the successes of LASEMA, while some are saying that it appears that Lagos has become a little more prone to emergencies, we know better that the emergencies now are better curtailed and we have better record keeping. So, and the public is being enlightened on the activities of LASEMA and how to take adequate precaution, personal and domestic, as well as industrial. And when you talk about expansion and being able to do better than we're doing now, one of it is trainings, retrainings, commitment, motivation, welfare, and especially creating passion. When all of these are combined, you discover, as I have discovered also, that the staff of LASEMA, ad hoc and otherwise, are fully motivated and they are all passionate about what they do. This makes it very easy for LASEMA's performance to increase. And one of it also is that the far-sightedness of the man at the helm of affairs, Dr. Olufemi Okeosonitolu, he has been able to diversify, create more dispatch centers, so to speak. This was what happened sometime in June last year, as in June 2019, when he returned as Director General to LASEMA with this dispensation. He was able to decentralize activities of LASEMA along the central districts and create new bases. So LASEMA operates from within the 3 districts and has 3 bases, making it easier for it to get to incident scenes faster with shortened response time. And these are some of the things that has placed LASEMA where it is today, even a notch higher than it used to be when he was their manager. The disasters.
The disasters. So now, in the expansion of LASEMA's operations in other states, how effective will be the management, and do you have the capacity development on it?
Yes, we do. Depending on the agreement between such states and Lagos State government, LASEMA, you can say, is the flagship in emergency management in the nation, perhaps in all of Africa. Looking at the response time from the records, because record keeping, archival materials is one of the strong points of LASEMA, as well as research, dispatch of equipment, sophisticated heavy-duty equipment purchased by the present administration under Dr. Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Then the headship. In every organization, the head determines how successful the operations will be. And the level of cooperation between Lagos and such states will determine the level of success, which will start from capacity building, then infrastructure. If it's Lagos State government, LASEMA is to play advisory roles. If it's going to go beyond that to capacity building, infrastructure and superstructure, supply of equipment, suggestions as to how the equipment should be deployed, recruitment of staff, upgrading of trainings and knowledge from time to time. If it's not going to be seen as unnecessary incursion, but some very smart states over time has come to LASEMA to understudy, to seek advice, just as other state governments have come to see what makes Lagos in its entirety tick.
Okay, that's a good one of LASEMA. They're doing so much in their operation and the expansion plans. What are the public enlightenments on flooding and its dangerous repercussions to the residents.
Though in terms of equipment, we can say confidently that LASEMA is very well equipped. It has virtually all equipment each of its stakeholders has. But coming to flooding, we go beyond public enlightenment. We have interministerial cooperations with the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. We have also arrangements and cooperation with the Ministry of Environment. And prior to the onset of rainfall annually, the LASEMA public enlightenment commences. Takes, for instance, the year 2000 NIMET predictions. Immediately the predictions were made, LASEMA swung into action, collaborating with other government agencies. Part of the enlightenment was to make residents understand the reason why they should not discard refuse in their drainages, and through the Lagos State Public Works and the Ministry of Works to discourage people from building on the floodplains and the natural waterways. Then, going beyond that, recommend, where necessary, the repairs of drainages in preparation for oncoming onset of the rainfall, while that of the cooperation with the Ministry of Environment goes to the drainage services. And all of these things came to bear recently from the activities of residents in K2.
Yeah, that was about the impact to the missing children in K2.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, and immediately that incident occurred, LASEMA went beyond search and rescue into activating public enlightenment. And on day 2 of that incident, LASEMA commenced swift operation again as early as.
What are the public enlightenment on flooding and its dangerous repercussions to residents, especially to the missing children in K2?
Well, we are talking about public enlightenment here. Annually, prior to onset of rainfall, LASEMA kickstarts its public enlightenment on the dangers of flooding, giving advisory messages of the level of water to be washed out for before relocating to higher grounds by those in flood-prone areas, and going further, deploying its sophisticated equipment and the new LASEMA technology. LASEMA has a GIS system and a GIS specialist, an expert that goes beyond the predictions of NIMET. The GIS expert in LASEMA has pinpointed in every part of Lagos the flood-prone areas, the expected rainfall, even before the NIMET predictions of the year 2020 rainfall. And immediately the NIMET predictions came, LASEMA swung into action, collaborating with other ministries, the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, as well as that of the Environment, giving advisory, suggestions, meetings with its other stakeholders when it comes to flooding and flood preparedness. Through the Public Enlightenment Unit, LASEMA has been able to dispatch messages to the members of the public, especially on the issue of refuse dispersal in drainages. LASEMA has also successfully advised members of the public when it comes to building on floodplains, blocking drainages with refuse, which is an age-long problem that Lagos State government has, so to speak, been able to partially successfully conquer. Though in some areas it is not fully conquered. That's why we had the partial flooding in K2, the recent experience where 2 children have been declared missing since 3-4 days back. And talking about the K2 experience, immediately LASEMA swung into action with its stakeholders on Saturday night after that rainfall, till when the operation was suspended after midnight. On day 2 of the operation, from as early as 5 a.m. when LASEMA returned to site, it was discovered that the flooding was partially caused by the refuse discarded in the canals and the open drains. And this caused LASEMA to immediately commence another round of public enlightenment. Aside the house-to-house search, inquiries as to any possible information that could help trace the two missing children, as well as the fact that part of the strategy used that day. This also goes in line with LASEMA's flood preparedness when it relayed messages to members of the public to be cautious, such that children of certain ages should be restrained from moving around when it rains in flood-prone areas. And it even took the campaign to schools before the COVID-19 struck, in preparedness for the rainy season this year. And such schools were pinpointed by the GIS experts of LASEMA using the latest technology for emergency preparedness.
So you're saying that some schools that have been pinpointed, in which areas are we looking at now?
Some of them are, some of the schools that were pinpointed included that, or the one at Lekiepe Axis.
Okay.
We had 2 secondary schools there, 1 primary school, then as well as those around Ikoyi. We went to 2 secondary schools there, Dinodu and Ireti Secondary School. Then also 2 schools at Agege under Education District 1, as well as 1 or 2 at Alimosho to educate.
This is very good, very vital information, because flooding has really cost a lot of life. So let's look at the collision of the train and the passenger's bus. What happened in Oshodi?
Oshodi, yes, the emergency began at PWD railway crossing, and the disaster occurred at the Oshodi arena, shopping arena, before terminating at the Oshodi under bridge, which the governor visited. Immediately he was available with the Minister of Transport as well as the DG CEO LASEMA, Dr. Kelson, to start off point. We can allude that disaster to carelessness on the part of people, especially drivers. We can also allude it to impatience on the part of Lagosians. Lagos is a fast-paced city. Everybody wants to do everything within the shortest possible time. We are all in haste. Lagos is in haste. But despite that, LASEMA has always been preaching that emergency disaster management is everybody's business. And one of the biggest precautions anybody can take is to assess the risk attached to our presumed action. If, for instance, that driver of the white bus had been just a little bit patient.
And this train doesn't take so much time to pass. Like 10 seconds or...
Within this, even if it's 3, 4, 5 minutes, it's sufficient to save lives and cause disasters in the bud. But unfortunately, most people assume that they can dash across railway lines at railway crossings especially like somewhere like PWD that does not have the barrier that is dropped when a train approaches the intersection. They forget that the rail itself and the train has an electromagnetic connection that sticks the wheel of the train to the rail. And when any machinery crosses those rails at particular distance to the train, it will automatically get stuck because the engine will stall. And when the engine stalls, definitely the train will meet such objects at the spot, which was what happened at PWD. The train met the white bus, rammed into it, dragged it along for the distance, and in the process, smashed the white bus into the Highlander Jeep, in which the owner and his son fell victim of the incident before pushing the white bus to the Oshodi under bridge, where it was eventually evacuated and recovered by LASEMA.
So who was a Highlander at the time the train was?
Highlander was reported to be at the entrance of the Oshodi Arena shopping complex. Perhaps if the train had not collided with the white bus, it may not have touched the jeep. But because it had the white bus in front pushing it along, for instance, if we had CCTV cameras there, we would be able to get precise details of what transpired, aside what amateur journalists were able to pick up. But nonetheless, the fact of the matter remains that the train collided with the white bus at PWD, dragged it all the way to Oshodi Arena, and smashed the Highlander there, then kept dragging the white bus.
What about the passengers inside that? Were there still passengers in the Highlander?
The Highlander had 2 occupants, and one of them died immediately at the incident site, while the other one was taken to the nearest hospital across the road. Then the whole thing terminated under the Oshodi Bridge when the train finally came to a stop. So the LASEMA recovery commenced from under bridge Oshodi, removing and recovering the white bus first, then retracing the steps to the Arena railway crossing, where the Highlander was also recovered.
I think LASEMA should do more of enlightenment in that aspect too for the train, because a lot of people take that for granted. So what message can you give to people right now, the kind of advice they should do whenever they see a train moving? What should they do? The pedestrian, the cars, the buses, what should they take into thought?
One of the vital people who are most at risk, but they are the least knowledgeable, those are the motorcyclists.
Okay.
They believe they can dash across.
So fast. They believe they're very fast.
They're very fast and they're very small, or rather slim, that they can dash across anything and anywhere. But the message is this: everybody in Lagos, even if we're going to use earpieces, should have only one in one ear, so that you'll be alert. You deploy your senses, your 5 or 6 senses at all times, not just your eyes, your ears as well. You have developed a 6th sense to danger, because sometimes some of these things, despite what government has provided, still, due to carelessness, inadequate preparedness, people risk their lives unnecessarily. Impatience is a major factor. And then we have this belief that we are invincible. No matter how much we think we are, the fact remains that when a train approaches, even pedestrians should not try to cross. Not to talk of machineries whose engines will get stalled due to electromagnetic waves. These are simple precautions. Then negotiations, we should learn to assess the risks when we're about to take any action. LASEMA keeps doing its bit. And in that same vein, in order to expand and push out additional information through additional communication channels, LASEMA has just launched its WhatsApp number 07025004985 to further assist with the 767-112 emergency toll-free lines, so that people can reach out in times of
Can you repeat the number again?
The new number, the WhatsApp number is 07025004985. In addition to the existing toll-free numbers of 767 or 112.
Well, okay, let's talk about the multiple accident that happened in Antony in Bagada.
Oh. Multiple accidents. That same yesterday, one occurred at Lekki, and that of Antony in Bagada involved 5 vehicles, aside the heavy-duty truck that crashed into them, which was alluded to mechanical failure on the part of the truck. Looking at that multiple accident, it's sometimes one can say it's preventable, but then truck owners and drivers especially should be more careful of how they drive, avoid reckless driving, then maintenance
of the truck.
A lot of accidents are alluded to brake failures, which are a form of mechanical failures on the part of the heavy-duty vehicles, which sometimes are products of lack of adequate maintenance of the vehicles.
Well, okay, let's look at the one that happened in Ajawu Estate. Is it the mechanic accident?
Yes, a mechanic lost his life. Perhaps because he did not take adequate responsibility for his personal protection. The vehicle involved in that incident was a heavy-duty truck.
But the mechanic, was he working for a company, or who was he working for? He's just on his own? Because I'm trying to think about the kind of training. Was there any safety training he had, or?
Such details are not available yet, as at this moment. But we know one thing for sure. The fact states that the mechanic is dead. He died almost immediately the incident occurred.
Can you just describe what that must have transpired? What he was doing wrongly, or what did he really do? Can you just give us an idea?
Looking at it, we come back to what Dr. Osantolu keeps saying, that emergency disaster management is everybody's business. We should learn, first of all, personal protection. If we take adequate personal protection, a lot of these disasters will be averted. And that begins with risk assessment. This thing I want to do, what is the risk involved? The risk attached. How do I reduce the risk to the barest minimum or take it out completely? Now, somebody is working on a truck axle. You're trying to repair truck axle. It entails removing the tire of that truck first, jacking up that axle so you can commence work on it. And this same truck has on its flat body, two 20-feet containers loaded to capacity, extremely heavy weight. He has used the hydraulic jack to jack it up, but he did not place metal hangers under the truck, such that if perhaps the axle slips off the jack, or even the hydraulic jack loses pressure, or lack of adequate knowledge on what to do in such circumstances, led to the death of that mechanic yesterday. Because when investigation was conducted by the LASEMA response team, it was discovered that the truck axle slipped from the hydraulic jack and smashed into the mechanic, who died almost immediately.
What a loss. So painful. But let's look at the NEMA walk-in visit and facility tour. How was it received by LASEMA? How did you perceive it?
It was a welcome development, because when the NEMA entourage arrived here today, led by their Director Rescue, Air Commodore E.K. Adedoku, he was elated at what he saw, because the Director General of LASEMA and other management staff took them round. They went to the center downstairs. They visited the emergency operation room as well. And they also visited the Kappa base hub of LASEMA heavy-duty equipment. And when the Commodore spoke, he was excited. He said he was surprised at the level of LASEMA's preparedness for emergencies, which is also alluded to the fact that that was one of the biggest factors responsible for LASEMA's effectiveness. In fact, I am proud to say that Dr. Olufemi Okeasontolu was given an award of commendation by the National Emergency Management Agency today.
Wow.
And that also goes a long way, aside recognition for the individual at the helm of LASEMA's affairs. It also goes to tell the staff and also serve as a kind of motivation that everywhere outside Lagos, people are watching, and some of them are celebrating, and others are also willing to learn from the LASEMA experience. That definitely there's something happening in Lagos that is making Lagos tick. And so many things are happening that is making LASEMA the success story that it is in Nigeria.
Thank you. We really appreciate what you just said about the DJ of LASEMA. But let's go finally on this. What is your advice to people in time of disaster, and how do you prevent this event from occurring? This is your last stake for you people.
My take is this. Prevention of disaster in times of emergencies, the first thing we should do, aside risk assessment to the individual or group of people concerned, you have to be calm and be clear-headed so that you can take necessary and adequate decisions don't rush into things you don't know. As we always tell them at emergency incident sites, we know that everybody wants to assist, but in the process, due to lack of knowledge, some people do more damage than good, which is the reason why the security agencies and LASEMA's collaborators and other stakeholders do what we do, cordon off the incident area. And when it comes down to brass tacks, the advice is that if you cannot do more than what you know, try as much as possible to do what pilots do in times of crisis, bail out as early as possible. But as much as possible in times of crisis, be calm, be cool, reason clearly before taking any decision.
Thank you.